Sumerian tablets are probably one of the oldest form of a written record that we have.
Extraterrestrials had something to do with our development.
For centuries, the secrets of ancient civilizations lay entombed in clay tablets, fragmented, eroded, and written in languages no longer spoken by any living soul. Among these, the cuneiform inscriptions of the Sumerians, Earth's first literate society, posed a near-impenetrable puzzle for generations of scholars. But now, we live in a whole different age. Recently, an AI model translated some ancient Sumerian texts and revealed terrifying knowledge about the human race. This is more than just a linguistic breakthrough. Hang tight as we explore it all. The language and its challenges. Sumerian, the world's earliest known written language, was spoken in southern Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, during the 3rd millennium BCE, flourishing between approximately 3100 and 1900 BCE. This linguistic relic of antiquity originated among the Sumerians, who established some of the first city-states in recorded history, including Uruk, and Eridu. Unlike Semitic languages like Akkadian, Sumerian is a linguistic isolate, meaning it has no known relatives or descendants. After around 2000 BCE, it ceased to be a spoken language and transitioned into a scholarly and liturgical tongue, much like Latin in medieval Europe, before disappearing entirely by the close of the 2nd millennium BCE. The Sumerians used a writing system known as cuneiform, derived from the Latin word cuneus, meaning wedge. This script was initially pictographic, but evolved over time into stylized wedge-shaped impressions made with a reed stylus on soft clay tablets, which were then baked or dried for preservation. By the time Sumerian writing matured around 2600 BCE, it featured hundreds of distinct signs, each with multiple readings depending on context. These signs could represent whole words, syllables, or determinatives that categorized words. The flexibility of cuneiform allowed it to adapt to several languages beyond Sumerian, including Akkadian, Elamite, Hittite, and Old Persian, but it also made accurate translations of the original Sumerian texts exceedingly complex. But all of that is changing now. Before the AI revolution, one of the biggest hurdles in translating Sumerian lay in the absence of living speakers. Modern understanding of the language is based entirely on texts unearthed in archaeological excavations, particularly from sites such as Nippur, Lagash, and Gersu. These texts include administrative records, religious hymns, legal codes, medical prescriptions, and mythological narratives. Some of the most significant discoveries were made in the 19th and 20th centuries, particularly during expeditions led by archaeologists like Austin Henry Layard and Leonard Woolley, who brought tens of thousands of tablets to institutions such as the British Museum and the University of Pennsylvania Museum. Because Sumerian was preserved only in written form and lacks phonetic or grammatical parallels with any modern language, translators must rely on Akkadian Sumerian bilingual tablets and lexical lists from ancient scribal schools to piece together meanings. Another major challenge is the condition of the source materials. Many tablets are broken, fragmented, or eroded by time, moisture, or mishandling. Some contain only partial lines or single characters, forcing translators to make educated guesses based on parallel texts or presumed narrative structure. Additionally, certain tablets were reused or overwritten, resulting in palimpsests that obscure original content. Even when complete, Sumerian grammar presents difficulties. It is an agglutinative language where meaning is built by stringing together prefixes and suffixes to a root word. Word order is flexible, and many grammatical markers remain poorly understood. A single term can serve as a noun, verb, or adjective, depending on its position and accompanying affixes. The ambiguity is compounded by homophony and polysemy. Multiple signs can represent the same sound, and the same sign can represent multiple meanings. Determinatives, which are non-pronounced signs added to clarify meaning, such as by indicating a word is the name of a god or a profession, help mitigate this, but not consistently. Moreover, Sumerian often omits pronouns and articles, which must be inferred from context, making literal translation nearly impossible. Recent advances in technology, particularly digital epigraphy and AI, have begun to ease these challenges. Projects like the Cuneiform Digital Library Initiative, or CDLI, and the Electronic Text Corpus of Sumerian Literature, or ETCSL, have digitized tens of thousands of tablets, allowing for broader access and comparative analysis. Optical character recognition, or OCR, adapted for cuneiform and neural translation models, is increasingly being employed to detect patterns and offer preliminary translations. Despite these tools, human expertise remains essential, especially in interpreting the cultural, theological, and administrative nuances embedded in Sumerian texts. The effort to decode Sumerian is not just a linguistic task, it is a cultural excavation. Each translated line opens a window into the beliefs, structures, and imagination of one of humanity's first civilizations. Yet, despite over a century of scholarship, many texts remain untranslated or incompletely understood. Now, let's see what AI has unveiled: machine translation and automated analysis of cuneiform texts. Launched as a collaborative initiative in the mid-2010s, the Machine Translation and Automated Analysis of Cuneiform Texts, or MTAAC project, is primarily based at the University of Toronto and led by Dr. Émilie Paget-Perron, a noted Assyriologist and digital humanities scholar. MTAAC's central objective has been to automate and enhance the translation and analysis of cuneiform texts written in Sumerian and Akkadian by leveraging modern natural language processing, or NLP, techniques. Specifically, the project has focused on decoding large corpora of administrative documents, especially those originating from the Third Ur period, dating back to around 2100 to 2000 BCE, a time of extensive bureaucratic activity centered in cities such as Ur, Girsu, and Nippur. Sumerian, the main language targeted by MTRC, poses extraordinary challenges for machine translation. It is a language isolate with complex morphology and no known descendants, making it extremely difficult to analyze using standard NLP tools designed for Indo-European or Semitic languages. Akkadian, its Semitic counterpart and sometimes successor, is relatively better understood due to a richer corpus and more consistent grammatical structure, but it too is written in cuneiform. MTAAC addresses these challenges by building specialized NLP pipelines that include automatic lemmatization, or the process of reducing words to their base forms, syntactic parsing or analyzing sentence structure, and named entity recognition or identifying proper nouns, place names, professions, and dates. These pipelines are custom-built to process transliterated cuneiform texts, which are stored in digital formats. A major milestone achieved by MTAAC was the creation of a deeply annotated corpus of over 10,000 Sumerian administrative texts. These texts cover a wide range of bureaucratic activities, such as grain rations, temple offerings, labor assignments, and livestock records, and are notable for their formulaic structure and recurring vocabulary. By feeding this dataset into machine learning models, MTAAC researchers generated statistical translation models that can automatically suggest English translations of Sumerian lines based on syntactic and lexical patterns. The annotated corpus also enables improved disambiguation of homographs, which are words spelled the same way but with different meanings. This is a frequent issue in Sumerian due to the limited number of cuneiform signs. One of the project's most innovative aspects is the deployment of dynamic, rule-based morphological analyzers designed to handle Sumerian's agglutinative grammar. Unlike English, which relies heavily on word order and auxiliary verbs, Sumerian conveys grammatical relationships through a series of prefixes and suffixes attached to root words. These affixes denote tense, mood, person, number, and even syntactic functions like subject or object. MTAX morphological modules can automatically recognize and parse these morphemes in real time, significantly reducing the amount of manual labor required by scholars when analyzing new texts. In parallel, syntactic parsers are trained on curated data to map the dependency relations between words, producing tree-like diagrams that visually represent sentence structures and improve machine comprehension. Beyond translation, MTAE has also advanced the study of cuneiform metadata. Its entity recognition tools can identify and tag personal names, geographic locations, deities, and official titles mentioned in the tablets. This has allowed scholars to trace networks of economic transactions, understand temple logistics, and map administrative hierarchies with unprecedented clarity. For instance, analysis of the texts has revealed patterns in how certain officials moved between cities like Umma and Ur, or how temples like the Ikur in Nippur managed livestock inventories across multiple years. MTAAC's outputs are designed to be open access and are made available through the Iraq ecosystem and GitHub repositories, allowing linguists, historians, and AI developers to engage with and build upon the project's tools and datasets. The project not only democratizes access to ancient texts, but also lays the groundwork for future research into other extinct languages. Its methodologies have inspired parallel initiatives in decoding Ugaritic, Hittite, and even early Chinese Oracle bone script, which share similar problems of limited data and morphological complexity. But wait, there's more from where that came. First neural machine translation system for Sumerian. In 2020, a landmark advancement in computational linguistics was achieved when Ravneet Punia, Nico Schenk, Christian Kiakos, and Emily Paget-Perron introduced the first neural machine translation, or NMT system, specifically designed for the Sumerian language. This initiative, detailed in their peer-reviewed study titled Supervised Neural Machine Translation for Sumerian, marked a pioneering effort in using artificial intelligence to produce automatic Sumerian to English translations. The project leveraged contemporary deep learning frameworks and harnessed both supervised learning and transfer learning techniques to construct models capable of parsing and translating Sumerian texts, with a particular focus on administrative and literary content. The research team trained their models using data sourced from the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, or ETCSL, a digitized repository maintained by the University of Oxford. This corpus comprises over 400 literary compositions and more than 10,000 lines of transliterated Sumerian, mainly from the Old Babylonian period, dating back to 2000 to 1600 BCE. The architecture uses an encoder-decoder framework with attention mechanisms, a setup commonly used in modern NMT systems like Google Translate. The Sumerian input sentences were tokenized and passed through an encoder that transformed them into fixed-length vectors. These vectors were then decoded into English equivalents, word by word, using an attention layer that allowed the model to selectively focus on different parts of the input sequence during translation. Crucially, transfer learning was employed to enhance the model's performance. The researchers pre-trained the system on more abundant language pairs, like French-English, and then fine-tuned it on the limited Sumerian English dataset. This technique mitigated the scarcity of training data, a perennial issue when working with ancient or dead languages. While the model's output was not intended to rival human translation in complexity or nuance, its results were nonetheless significant. It was capable of producing accurate end-to-end translations for a wide variety of short Sumerian sentences, especially those describing administrative activities such as grain distributions, livestock accounting, temple offerings, labor allocation, and tax collection. These documents, typically discovered at sites like Ur, Umma, and Lagash, often adhered to highly structured syntactic forms. The machine learning model successfully learned these patterns and applied them to previously unseen texts, achieving translation accuracy that rivaled or exceeded earlier rule-based methods in efficiency and fluency. Google AutoML experiment, Lawrence Cullen's NMT prototype. In 2021, researcher Lawrence Cullen used Google AutoML, a cloud-based suite of tools designed to enable non-experts to build custom machine learning models in the field of Assyriology. The model was trained on a dataset comprising approximately 13,000 aligned Sumerian English sentence pairs, many of which were sourced from the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature. The alignment process involved pairing Sumerian lines with their closest English translations. Cullen's NMT model achieved a BALAU, or bilingual evaluation understudy score, of approximately 12.38. While this score may appear low by the standards of high-resource languages like French or Spanish, it is considered meaningful in the context of ancient, low-resource languages. Cullen's experiment did not aim to rival professional human translation, but rather to explore the viability of using general-purpose AI tools to parse and decode extinct languages. The Google AutoML environment allowed for rapid prototyping without requiring custom-coded deep learning frameworks, making the experiment accessible and replicable for researchers in digital humanities. The system performed best on highly formulaic texts, particularly those found in hymns, royal inscriptions, and administrative records, where vocabulary and syntax followed recognizable patterns. Among the more intriguing outputs of Cullen's NMT prototype were several lines that echoed mythological and theological themes present in both Sumerian and later Mesopotamian traditions. In particular, one deciphered phrase, translated as something close to "blood of man from clay," struck a chord with scholars familiar with the Enuma Elish and the Atrahasis, two key Babylonian creation epics written in Akkadian, several centuries after the decline of spoken Sumerian. The Atrahasis, dated to around the 18th century BCE and preserved on tablets found at sites like Sippar and Ashur, describes how the gods created mankind by mixing clay with the blood of a slain deity. This motif of combining divine essence with earth to create humans appears to have deep roots in Sumerian cosmology, where gods like Enki, the lord of wisdom and waters, and Namu, the primordial sea goddess, were believed to have played a role in forming mankind to bear the burden of labor. The appearance of such a phrase in the machine-translated output does not confirm new myths or texts, but it suggests that Cullen's system was successfully identifying and reproducing motifs deeply embedded in the Sumerian textual tradition. It is plausible that the training data included texts like the myth of Enki and Nimma, in which humans are fashioned from clay as a solution to the gods' fatigue from toil. That these themes reappeared in the AI's translations, even in fragmentary or ambiguous lines, indicates a level of contextual pattern recognition that goes beyond rote word substitution. And now comes the part where we unveil terrifying knowledge about the human race. A disturbing revelation. Artificial intelligence has recently cast new light on one of the most provocative myths from ancient Mesopotamia, that of Enki and Ninmah. Preserved in Sumerian and dating to at least the early 2nd millennium BCE, this myth tells the story of how humans were created by the gods, not as a pinnacle of creation, but as a solution to a labor shortage. With the aid of machine learning models, scholars are now revisiting this text in more nuanced detail than ever before. AI-assisted translations suggest that the gods, particularly Enki, the god of wisdom, and Ninmah, a mother goddess and midwife figure, created humans as defective laborers, designed not for exaltation, but for servitude and menial work. According to multiple tablet versions of the myth held in collections such as the Ashmolean Museum and the British Museum, the gods, specifically the Anunnaki, grew weary of performing endless toil to maintain the universe. In response, Enki and Ninmah undertook a collaborative act of creation using clay mixed with divine essence, often interpreted as the blood of a slain deity. This detail appears in closely related Akkadian myths, such as the Atrahasis, where the rebel god Wei-Ila is sacrificed, and his blood is used to animate the clay figure of man. In the Sumerian account, the resulting humans were far from perfect. Early models included one who could not walk, one who was blind, one who could not hold back urine, and one who was sterile. These prototypes were either dismissed or repurposed by the gods. For instance, the infertile man was designated as a temple eunuch. Machine-assisted parsing of these texts, particularly through neural models trained on corpora like the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, has brought new clarity to these ancient lines. Researchers from institutions like LMU Munich and the University of Pennsylvania have used deep learning to reconstruct fragmentary passages, identifying the syntax and lexemes that highlight the repeated motif of trial and failure. The AI analysis reveals a deliberate sequence of flawed creations, each designed to test the viability of the human form. This process was framed as a literal effort to fabricate a labor force, echoing a mechanistic view of human origins. Perhaps most unsettling is the conclusion of the myth, in which Enki finally succeeds in creating a version of humanity that can work, reproduce, and obey. This successful prototype is not celebrated as a crowning achievement, but is accepted pragmatically as a solution to the gods' exhaustion. The narrative ends with Ninmah being intoxicated and unable to challenge Enki's success, symbolizing the finality of the flawed but functional human. Unlike the more romanticized Genesis creation story in the Hebrew Bible, where humanity is formed in the image of God, the Sumerian account suggests that humans were expendable, crude constructs engineered for utility. This theme of flawed human origins has not escaped the attention of modern theorists, some of whom, particularly proponents of ancient astronaut hypotheses, argue that these myths reflect early encounters with technologically advanced beings. While these interpretations remain speculative and outside mainstream scholarship, the text itself, now more fully accessible thanks to AI translation, clearly presents a version of humanity that is experimental, manufactured, and originally disposable. The idea that we are the product of failed iterations aligns with philosophical questions about identity and purpose, offering a startlingly bleak vision of the ancient world. AI-enhanced reading has allowed us to reconstruct grammatical nuance that had long been obscured by damaged tablets or ambiguous phrasing. In older translations, much of the emotional tone and structural irony in the gods' dialogue was flattened. Now, with improved syntactic modeling and lemmatization algorithms, scholars can better assess the narrative flow and divine intentions within the myth. These improvements have also helped correlate the Sumerian account with later Akkadian myths and even biblical narratives, revealing shared motifs and divergent theological perspectives on human worth and divine motivation. These ancient records, made legible by machines, paint a disturbing picture of human origins. We are not always the cherished children of the divine. In many ancient myths, we are born of necessity, cobbled together from blood and mud to relieve the burden of celestial beings. That modern technology is now decoding this ancient view of ourselves adds a strange irony to the journey. Perhaps machines are helping us understand not just who we were, but how we were once viewed, as tools, as mistakes, and ultimately as a successful compromise. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.